Hey there, I'm Christy. Welcome to my channel. If you are new, I am in Northern Alberta, Canada, growing zone 2B, and today I'm going to take you on a little tour of my farmstead or homestead, whatever you want to call it. Here we call it a hobby farm, but I have a flower farm where I do produce florals for a couple of different florists and events, and I do host little bouquet bars and such. But today I just wanted to go and do a walkthrough and show you what I have growing here. We've had, if you haven't heard the news up in Northern Alberta or Canada, we have had an extremely rough year. We've had fires, and part of that comes drought, and also what we've had here to deal with was grasshoppers and disease. As you can see, they have basically destroyed my lilac bushes. They ate all the leaves off of the lilac bushes, the grasshoppers did. And we didn't have any rain until about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, which finally things have started to green up. But it is pretty serious up in our part of the world. And so I'm going to show you some of the things that we have been harvesting. I grow eggs. I have a lot of chickens. I just harvested my garlic. This was fall planted garlic. Last October I planted it here, and I went through the greenhouse and I picked a few little things to make an arrangement, a special gift for someone. Yesterday I also picked some tomatoes. I think these are the sun gold ones. I'm not 100% sure because my tags were MIA temporarily. I will find them though, find out which varieties are which very soon and do a video on my tomatoes. But the Lysianthus are beautiful this year, and I did manage to get a few carnations, and I'll show you those in the greenhouse and such. But it's been a very challenging year. And these are the dahlias or however you say it. I'm not going to get into it today, but these are actually doing really, really well. These are some of the tubers that I had ordered in from Van Noort. This is Corinth, and it actually bloomed its little head off. I cut it back, and it is doing another flush, and this is Sweet Annie. So I'm growing these as cut flowers, obviously, for my florist, and Sweet Annie is a really pretty filler, but it can be very fragrant. So I'm hoping I can use these for some later designs for outdoor events that require a little bit more bulkiness and the fragrance isn't too strong. These are perennials. I put these in the spring. These also came in from Van Noort this spring. This is a variety. I cannot remember the name of it. I did it in an unboxing, but it is a sedum, and I love using sedum as a cut flower filler. I'm going to try to clone some of these by taking cuttings and seeing if I can get them to root, but they are just absolutely beautiful. They dry, they last forever in a vase, and they're beautiful landscape flowers as well. These are lilies. I have calla lilies. These were extras that I just plugged in here. I've harvested these several times. We've done arrangements with these, and I've sold some of these already. They're beautiful. The bugs don't seem to bother them that much compared to the white ones. And then these are rose lilies, and I absolutely love rose lilies. The rose lilies in this trough are not, because I'm in zone 2, these will not survive the winter in this trough. So I'm going to dig these out this fall and put them into my greenhouse under cover and mulch, where I'm hoping to get a little bit earlier blooms than in August for these guys, but they're just gorgeous. I think rose lilies are one of my favorites, and the fragrance, oh wow, they're so good. I do have some little bachelor buttons. These were eaten completely down by grasshoppers. For some reason, grasshoppers really love bachelor buttons. And I have some eucalyptus that I had grown from seed in there as well. So that's the trough. Last year, I think I had squash and peas in this trough. And this year, I just kind of used it as a catch-all for the extra stuff. Oh, the chickens. The chickens the chickens were what saved my farm and homestead from being completely wiped out by grasshoppers. I'm very grateful that I incubated those chicks this spring and let them out. I incubated them as meat birds and let them out, but they did damage my zinnia patch. This was all zinnias, this whole planter, but this is the one and only that I have right now. They did do a number on the planter box that once they got under the row cover or the netting, but that's okay. They have taken care of the ant problem that I was having in these planters. This is some feverfew, and I haven't used any of it yet. I'm hoping to use it as a filler here in the coming weeks, just simply because we're moving into the time of the year where some of the stuff gets a little tired. My peppers, I've harvested a lot for fresh eating, and the chickens did get in here. I see they caused some damage. They took out all the carrots that were planted in this planter as well, and they made they took little chunks and little bites out of some of the sweet peppers, but that's fine. I still have lots preserved from last year, so that's okay. These are just for fresh eating. I did plant some zucchini very late. I have yellow zucchini, regular zucchini, I think it's called desert, and then zucchini, and then I have it's a patty pan as well growing here. I did have a whole row beside it of watermelons, and they got taken out by grasshoppers. These were last year's lilies. I think these are the Bach lilies. Beautiful cut flowers. These are very popular for funerals. There has not been many funerals lately here, so I haven't been harvesting any of those. And these this bed I actually installed wine cap mushrooms in, and I did have some of the last year's liatris coming in. This is the bed that was in the cold frame. These two beds were in the cold frame, and I planted brassicas in here, and the bugs have been just chewing it up. But I do have a few kohlrabi growing, and the other side was all calla lilies, but they were all chewed down by grasshoppers as well. This was planted this spring with feverfew and yarrow. So the yarrow is a perennial here, and I wanted this whole bed to be yarrow because I was planning to use it for weddings, wedding filler for my florists. And the grasshoppers completely chewed these completely down into stems, and they actually started to grow back finally, and they're blooming early, or a little prematurely. That's okay. I'm hoping next year this will be a solid wall of multicolored yarrow, and I can't wait. I do have some poppies in here, and I'm probably going to sprinkle some poppy seeds in here as well to have yarrow and poppies, as that's their primary bed. So let's go take a look at what's in the actual garden. This is the farm office, as some of you have seen previous videos. This is going to be moved here this fall. It will be taken to a different location, which we'll update you as that comes along here. But this is the garden where I had my potatoes, and I had some issues with some pathogens, and I'm just leaving it this year. I'm hoping that I can resolve it with some of the beneficial bacteria I have going in the farm, and some regenerative stuff, which we're not going to get into that today. But this is, this is my dogwoods. I planted dogwoods, and these were planted last year. They overwintered really well. They handled minus 50 degrees Celsius. So, hey, bonus. They were mulched really good last year, and they have quadrupled in size. They're just beautiful plants. I harvested quite a bit off of them. And then these are the hydrangeas that I also planted last year. They came in from Van Noort, and I planted a whole row of these, and the grasshoppers, oh, wow. I was in tears when I came out here because they were all chewed down except for the sparing ones that had, I had actually installed wine cap mushrooms, the mycelium, and I also really heavily doused them with worm castings. And the ones that had good, had the worm casting and the what do you call it? The mushroom spores that had actually started to work and take were the ones that didn't get chewed up. And these ones that didn't, like, they didn't have, the chickens came in and they scratched away the mycelium, and they scratched away all of the worm castings. They just didn't do anything. These are actually the perennial phlox that I planted this spring. I wasn't sure how these are going to do. I don't know if these are going to overwinter very well, but I'm in love with this plant. I hope they do really well, because maybe next year, once we'll see what happens. But I would like to order a ton of these and have like a whole row of these perennial phlox. I absolutely love them. I think they're just stunning. And I wanted to add more to my perennial beds. We're going into more of my homestead garden here. This is the section of the garden where I have 3 different varieties of corn. The varieties of corn that I've planted are Bodacious, Allure, and My Fair Lady. I grew those last year, and I will be honest, the Allure corn from last year that I preserved in the freezer, we can't eat it. I've been feeding it to the chickens because it's so sweet. You can't stand to eat it. I can't eat it. So I'm not sure about the Allure corn, if I'm going to harvest it for preservation or fresh eating, or if I'm growing it for chicken feed. I might just like throw them in the freezer and give them to the chickens as treats, or give it to the chickens on hot days when we have 30 above and they're really having a hard time cooling down. They really like frozen corn. So we'll see. I do see that there's quite a few headed up, but we're getting some low temperatures, and I'm really concerned we're going to have an early frost. So I might not get corn at all. I think they should be okay, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. We love eating sweet corn, so we'll see what happens. Now, these are the tomatoes, the indeterminate tomatoes, and I was away for baseball. My son was playing AA baseball this year, and so we didn't have a lot of time at home, and the traveling was ridiculous. So I had not had much time to be here to trellis, and so I kind of did it late, but that's okay. I will actually do another video on the varieties. I had done a planting video, so if you wanted to check that out, I can link that below. But this is the raspberries that I planted, and they're starting to really fill in. And then the row that to the right of me is actually the determinate varieties of tomatoes. And let me tell you, some of them are not determinate. They were mislabeled by either me or the packaging. Not sure, but there was definitely some not, some indeterminates were planted as determinants, and it was very, very wrong. So I had to hack a bunch of that back. But look at this. My chickens, the downside of having free-range chickens is I throw away or compost a ton of eggs, because it's an egg hunt every day. Like, I find eggs, you wouldn't believe where I find eggs. And not just chicken eggs, guinea eggs too. The guineas, they like to lay in the most random of places. But yeah, the tomatoes, there's a lot of tomatoes in here. So that's okay. The last time I made I grew 1,000 pounds of tomatoes a couple of years ago, and I'm still working on going through those tomatoes. And I actually made salsa out of some of those tomatoes from last year, just a few weeks ago. So I'm really happy that I have a ton of tomatoes, because we use a ton of tomatoes for canning and preserving. These were I had planted some marigolds of my auntie's and as like a memorial for her, but the grasshoppers took them out, but they're starting to make a comeback. Most of these sunflowers are kind of volunteer, and I just let them grow from the previous year, and I'm letting them go into seed and then harvesting the seeds. The chicken feed this year is ridiculously expensive. So I'm trying to preserve as much, or not preserve, but grow as much of my own animal feed as I can this year as well. Yeah, it is a little bit of a jungle still with the tomatoes, but these are the determinants, so they're going to be done I'll be harvesting them. These are some of the larkspur that I had planted out here. I've harvested off of these several times, and they're so beautiful. One of my favorite garden flowers is larkspur, and the bees, they really love them. This variety I think is called Smoky Eyes. I got these seeds I think from Florell, but previous years I think I gotten them from Johnny's Seeds. And I love larkspur. It is just beautiful, and it dries so beautiful. My florist often requests these as like garden flowers or whimsical flowers. So yeah, these are the not flowers. Oh my goodness, tomatoes. These are the determinant tomatoes that were not determinant tomatoes. I believe these are the sun golds. I think. I'm not sure. I have to watch my planting video and just double check and make sure that I have that accurate on my labels. This whole row is status. Now, I should have double the status than what is in here, but this is like, it's about a 50-foot row of status, just status. And then these are Godacia or Clarkia. They are a beautiful, beautiful filler flower, and they can also be like a bit of a focal flower depending on your design. I love these. They are just this funky little flower that lasts forever, and they seem to be one that just keeps going and going and going. So I definitely love these ones. The white ones are often pest magnets, so I tend to only use the colorful ones, the multicolored ones. Yeah, it's just tomatoes, status, and sunflowers. That's kind of like what my farm is lately. I did have some Rudbeckia that survived. I love Sahara Rudbeckia. I love this flower. Very excited to have some growing outdoors as well. And this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a great flower for cut flower. It was an experiment and it worked. These are a lot of the sunflowers are starting to branch, and I've been harvesting some of the big heads and feeding them to the chickens. We have some massive sunflowers this year, and a lot of volunteer stuff. This is the forget-me-nots, and I had some grasses growing there, just as little filler flowers. And it's kind of like a little bit of a secret garden maze back in here. The corn and the sunflowers just kind of taken over everything. And then, surprise, there's a Lisianthus growing in here as well. So, yeah, there's all kinds of things in the garden that just are kind of everywhere. It is a wall of sunflowers, though, and I can't complain because I actually really think it's pretty. Very, very cottage-esque, I guess. So, behind the greenhouse, this is embarrassing. This is so embarrassing. It is a disaster. I have not had much time to do much weeding or care for this behind the scenes. But let's face it, we all are busy sometimes. And this is where I have my rose lilies, and I regret putting them back here because I wish I could see them from the yard or the house. But man, are they gorgeous. And that's what I like about coming back here when it is nice and weeded and pretty. These are actually a beautiful display. This year I thought I would be harvesting all of these, but it's been really slow. There is a recession, and let's face it, with the flowers, north of us is evacuated, like the territories. They've evacuated Yellowknife, and there's many other communities and towns that have been evacuated. So I've noticed that people are not really spending a lot of money. They do have extra money on stuff. They are making donations, and it is just not a really good time right now. We are in a recession, and it's going to continue to be this way. So the flower farm stuff has not been really selling. The market is really harsh this year. farmers are my primary source of income, and they're having a very hard year this year because of the drought. So it is what it is. These are perennials. The lilies are perennials, and I am not complaining. I'm going to let them produce more bulbs, and we'll have lots and lots of lilies next year. That's all there's to it. Okay, let's go take a look at the garden and less horsing around. Poppies. Aren't they beautiful? I absolutely love poppies, and I definitely need to add more to my farm in the coming years. They're just so pretty and cheery, and I love the pods. Now, these guys, I cannot remember the name of them. If you know what those were, please tell me, because they are an incredible cut flower. And just so many sunflowers. I'm not complaining at all. I love sunflowers. The cosmos have really stepped up. These are the apricota cosmo. I do have a variety of different cosmos. I cannot remember the names of the varieties of each of the variety of cosmo, but I haven't really harvested many of these. They just didn't do very good. Earlier in the season, the grasshoppers just completely chewed them down. These apricotas seem to be doing the best, though, out of all of the varieties, and I think that those are kind of my tried and true varieties. And over yonder is Monty having a little hissy fit that Bailey is standing too close to her. Oh, those two, they always have hissy fits. I don't know when they'll ever get along. This is like the tallest sunflower I have ever grown on the farm. It is taller than my greenhouse, which is kind of really, really tall. That's a long ways up there, and it's quite an adventure to get through here and do any harvesting. I'll tell you that much. And usually I'm stepping on eggs. The chickens love to lay a trove of eggs in here, and it is quite a mess, but it is beautiful, so I'm not complaining. Look at that pretty yellow, punch of yellow up there. But okay, let's take a look and see what else we have growing on the farm. It is pretty. I wish I would have filmed this during the evening or early morning when the lighting wasn't so icky, but it is actually pretty peaceful out here. Now let's talk seriousness about regenerative agriculture, because I will tell you, this completely convinced me. This row here is astilbe. Now, if you've watched my videos, you've seen that astilbe this spring came up. Well, these astilbes were the same row of astilbe, and they're doing beautiful. These did not get affected by the grasshoppers. They didn't get chewed down by the grasshoppers, and they didn't get any disease like the rest of the row. The difference was between the beginning part of this section of the row and the rest of it was I had installed wine cap mushrooms. So that part had no wine cap mushroom spores installed, and the front part did have wine cap mushroom spores installed. And guess what? They had more disease and pest resistance because the soil is healthy and the microbiome is there. And so I've proved it to myself that it's a big deal to keep the fungi and the microbiome in the soil intact. Lesson learned, moving forward, no doubt in my mind. So now let's take a look inside and see what kind of damage we have in here. I'm kind of embarrassed to take you in here. Not kind of, I am embarrassed to take you in here. But there is pretty things like these beautiful violas that I spring planted really early. They survived minus 30 below under cover when we had a really cold spring, and we had some issues with the furnace in the greenhouse. They actually did come back, and these are still my spring planted flowering kale. Now we've had like 5 degrees Celsius days or 6 degrees Celsius days, so they're starting to color up again. These are my very pest-ridden snapdragons, and I haven't pulled them out because I really want to have some beauty in my life, and I'm going to let these flower for myself. I'm not able to harvest them and sell them, but I am able to enjoy them and then feed them to the chickens so the chickens can eat the pests. These are the Sahara and that was also a calla lily. And these are yarrow that I spring and fall planted. And there's a random eucalyptus, but I cut those back because the hoppers stripped them down to nothing. And I'm just kind of letting it rebound and perennialize. These are some status. I've already harvested twice off of these. This is the third flush I'm getting off of these this year. This is probably the most profitable bed I have in the entire garden right now. Very profitable. And then I have my big, beautiful marigolds. These are the cocoa variety. These are the ones that Serena grows for cut flowers on You Can't Eat the Grass, this variety here. And I can see why. They're very, very beautiful. They stand up to all kinds of stuff. And this is still the flowering kale that I spring planted, but I can't really use it because it's chewed up. So I do need to come in and take this bed out. I think I'm probably going to put some seeds in that bed. I'm not sure yet. And then these are still my spring planted. Oh, there's Reggie. But those were my spring planted snapdragons as well. But look at these. They are so beautiful, but I can't use them. They're full of thrips. And I can't use them. So I'm just going to enjoy them and cut them back and feed them to the chickens. So it is nice to be able to enjoy some space for yourself, right? If you got to work, it may as well be pretty. And I have a lot of work to do in here. So over in this bed is where I had garlic planted, that was fall planted, and I just harvested that. I actually showed you at the beginning of this video the harvest I had. This, whew, I tell ya, Tweedia. This was a request last year from my florist. I've never grown it before, and it is a challenge to grow it for me, but I'm figuring it out, and it is beautiful. These are Sweet William. I can't remember the name of them, but they have been harvested several times, and they keep coming back. They are also a favorite of the grasshoppers, as are the carnations. Carnations are like a grasshopper delicacy, so I have not had very many carns to be able to harvest. They are the mini ones, but they smell so good, and I just love them so much. They make a beautiful addition to any bouquet, and the florists really like them, especially the locally grown ones, and the clients of the florists really like them. They really love the idea of having locally grown carnations. These are the cherry caramel phlox, the annual phlox. I started these ones from seed. I have harvested probably like 200 stems off of that little patch there. Now, if you recall, the center part of the greenhouse, I had in the spring, I had a bunch of we had daffodils on the far side. In the middle part, we have daffodils planted on that side. And here we have anemone. And then back there was all ranunculus. Now, the corms are still in the ground, and I'm not sure if I'm going to dig them out or not. I haven't decided yet, but that's a work in progress, is to flip the greenhouse yet. These all need to come out. They're very tired. They're sunflowers. And I just haven't had a chance to come in and clean all this stuff out yet. And I've been harvesting out of here, to be honest, still. So it's just coming to the very end of the season for in the greenhouse. And I decided after I received my gas bill, I'm not going to run the greenhouse this fall. So I'm not planting anything in here as cut flowers or for food production unless it's like spinach or lettuce. But yeah, all of this has to go. These are scabiosa, and I'm going to harvest some of the pods so that we can use those in dried arrangements. And then these are still some of the stock that we're growing, and tomatoes. I have tomatoes everywhere. I used worm castings in the greenhouse, and the worm castings come with the gift of tomato seeds. And also these grasshoppers are still in here ridiculously. I just can't get rid of them. I did have a bird in here that was actually taking care of the population, and the bird has since left the building, but there are still a few little grasshoppers in here, and hopefully we'll be able to knock that out for next year, and we won't have that issue. I have learned a lot of what I'm going to do next year to prevent this from wiping me out on my farm. especially when it comes to disease carried by grasshoppers. So yeah, these are actually verbena, and they're a really great flower for cut flowers. And then this is the yarrow that I spring planted. The grasshoppers ate those down. If you've seen my previous videos, it was really hard to show you that, but they're starting to come back, and I think they'll perennialize in here just fine. I also have some of the Lysianthus planted with these tomatoes. I let them kind of just take over, the tomatoes take over, and that's okay. I'm harvesting food out of here. I do have a little bit of Dara growing in here still from spring planting, and these are the Nigella pods from the Nigella flowers that I'm going to be harvesting and using those as little filler flowers as well. Isn't this beautiful? Oh, I love Lysianthus. Love it. But we had some issues with disease and pests, so there wasn't very many in here. And I think I might leave some of these in here. Just again, while I'm working in here, I really like looking at beautiful things, and we'll see. I might harvest them, might not, but there's a ton of tomatoes regardless of what I decide to do. There's a ton of food in here. There's a lot. So yeah, I have a lot to do yet in the greenhouse. I'm waiting for cooler days where I can work in here and enjoy some sunshine. But I really do love Lizzie's. I have decided next year I'm not ordering any Lysianthus plugs. I spent way too much money on Lysianthus, and I didn't make any of the money back. I'm actually in the hole on Lysianthus. So lesson learned, Lysianthus does not grow well for me up in our climate unless I'm able to start it from seed, because buying plugs does not justify for the market. I cannot sell Lysianthus for market value in our area. So I'm growing tomatoes instead, because tomatoes are worth more per pound than I can get for Lysianthus. So that's fine. We'll make it work. Yeah, it is a miserable disaster, but there's still beauty in here, and I still love it. So it is what it is. Next year, I've learned so much this year, and next year I'm going to implement what I've learned. It was a hard year, let's face it. My husband was working away all summer. I've seen him very, very minimally. He was on fires all season, and my son was playing baseball for a team that was a 3-hour drive away, one direction. So I didn't spend much time at home, and doing all of this alone is a big responsibility and a lot of work. So the garden for my food preservation it's non-existent anymore. I don't have a lot growing for food this year, and I'm going to rely on game and foraging. But I do have 16,000 bulbs going in the ground for tulips this fall for next season for the flower farm. So I do have a lot in the works, and I do hope that you stick around. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Did y'all know that grasshoppers eat garlic? They ate it all down.